friends, and welcome to my PowerPoint presentation, Hot Beginner Art Tips in Your Area. So I've been wanting to make this video for a little while, and I have finally put together all of my hot tips and forbidden shapes and favorite websites. So I'm going to take you through some things to help you get started if you are new at art, or maybe you'll learn something even if you're not new at art. Who's to say? Let's go on an adventure! Whoa! So my number one tip, which I've said many times, is use references. References are always better than not references, and you will improve way faster if you use a reference. But where is one to find references? So I have a few different options that I'm going to take you through, and now you're going to see the back end of my presentation. So the first reference website that I used ever was Adorkastock, which used to be Stock on DeviantArt. This is run by Sarah Ford, who is a colleague and friend of mine. We've run some things together, and we are both from the Sailor Moon fandom originally, and she has a really awesome range of pose references. It used to be mostly just her and her husband doing things, and now she has tons of different models with tons of different body types, tons of poses. And you can find really a lot of great stuff here. So this is my number one recommendation. It's adorkastock.deviantart.com or deviantart.com/adorkastock, and I'll link that in the description. I am not sponsored or anything. I just like her work and wanted to give her a shout out. So that's number one. The second one is a website called Doll-Atelier, and this is also a Design Doll website. So Design Doll is an app you can download that is free. I don't know if there's a version for Mac, but I believe there is. You can download a mannequin and pose and edit and do whatever you want with it. So what Doll-Atelier is a repository of ones people have already made. So I'll show you. They have it sorted into categories. I will say that this site is occasionally not safe for work. There's no definition on the bodies, but some of the poses that are user submitted can be a little bit suggestive. So what I like about this site is it has more anime proportions, more like exaggerated proportions than real bodies do. And if you have the app, you can edit that to your liking. But it's easier for me to stylize my art when I'm starting from a reference that is a little bit stylized as well. This is a good resource for that, and that's Doll-Atelier. So my third one is one you've probably heard of, which is Line of Action. And now this site, the figure drawing section, you can turn it on so that there are no nude models, but generally speaking, this site is not as safe for work, and they have better references if you leave the nude models on, in my experience. The clothed models are a little more limited, but you can just get hands, faces. But the thing with this is it's not really searchable to my knowledge. So it's more a tool that you use. You pick out your settings on what you want to practice drawing, and then how long you want the timer to go. You can pause it while it's going if you want to work on a pose longer, and then you hit the button, and you start drawing. So that's pretty cool. It's good for figure study, but as far as I know, there isn't really a way to look through this as an archive, or at least not one that I've ever used. So yeah, and this is a great way to practice. I should probably do an animal drawing one at some point because I'm so bad at drawing animals. But yeah, that's my second one. My third one is, I guess we'll start here. This one is not a free resource technically. Well, it technically is, but I like looking at Sims 4 builds for interiors. I also like building them myself. The only thing with this is these aren't meant to be art references, so you do have to ask permission from whoever made it, and I've never had someone say no, but I recommend asking first. This is just one blog that has a bunch of references on it. There are many. There's a lot of people on YouTube that make these incredible builds, so these are great for interiors. And I have a copy of the game that I used to build my own references. I do a lot of customs content, so I can build like D&D settings and things, because there didn't used to be a ton of that in the game. There's more now that you can use. I'll put some screenshots on the screen here, or possibly even a little bit of video. So this is another great resource. This is The Sims 4. The base game is usually only a few dollars. It's like $5. And there's a ton of packs, and you know, EA isn't the best company in terms of how they manage their IPs, but I don't mind giving them money. They're also very LGBT friendly in the workplace, so if you don't want to buy it, there's tons of simmers out there building stuff that you can use as references if you ask permission. So that's kind of an unusual art reference tool that I wanted to let people know about. I have not seen other artists use this. I see people use Google SketchUp, which is another interior design application, but I don't know how to use that, and I already knew how to use The Sims because I'd already played it. So that is my plug for getting The Sims 4. The Sims 4 art style also happens to just match my art style, which is a little bit cartoony, a little unrealistic. So just something to keep in mind. If you want more realism for exterior shots specifically, Google Maps Street View is one of my favorite ways to do it. So I've actually just pulled up a location that I have been to in Japan. This is Takarazuka. It's a musical theater town. I mean, it's not, the whole town isn't that, but they are famous for having an all-female theater review company. So I'm just going to drop this little dude somewhere. And the stuff on Google Maps, you can drop your little dude anywhere. If you have a specific place you would like to draw, go there on Google Maps and use this as a reference. Don't like trace it, but you can like break down these shapes and go from there. And if you aren't getting an angle you like, then you can just start over. Let's go over here and see. Oh, got a truck. Don't draw the people on Google Maps. They didn't consent to that. But the buildings, absolutely. Another fun place that I like to... This is a shrine in Kyoto. And there are some lovely vistas and views. Oh, it looks like it was under construction when this was taken. So, you know, if you're not good at doing landscapes and stuff, use a reference. And if you need a free reference, go on Google Maps and go to a place that you want to draw that has the kind of architecture you want and do it. So those are my favorite art references. Let me know your favorite art references in the comments. Next, watch other artists' work, perhaps even on youtube.com. And I hear if you subscribe to my channel, it will unlock 50 free gems to advance your art faster. I'm kidding, but I learned a lot just watching art YouTube. I watched a lot of Drawing with Waffles, Super Ray Dizzle, and she doesn't post anymore, but her channel used to be Juicy Ink, and now it's just Victoria Gedvillas. I'm not sure how she pronounces it. But I watched a lot of artists' work, and even if they're not instructional videos, I learned a lot just from watching like how people paint, how they layer colors and things like that. So I highly recommend it, and I think that's a great way to learn. And that also includes my channel, so, you know, like and subscribe if you found this helpful. But don't worry, we have only just begun. My next tip is to find a medium you don't hate. I have experimented with every medium, not every medium, but a lot of mediums, and sometimes an art supply just isn't working for me. Let yourself be okay with that. You're not going to be good at every single medium. For a long time, I really only did digital, and then I only did alcohol markers, and then very, very slowly I learned how to do watercolor. It took a good year just to get okay at watercolor. Because I had not really painted before. So give yourself time, but also find a medium that makes you enjoy just using it on its own, even if you're not making great art. Alcohol markers are a pretty easy place to start. They're finicky at first, but I find most people can pick them up quick. Colored pencils are another easy one, though those are too hard on my hands personally to use. But yeah, experiment with mediums, see what you like. And if there's another medium you want to learn that you're having issues with, come back to it later. I actually learned watercolor first by experimenting with watercolor brush pens, like Tombow pens and stuff. So they weren't even true, like, paintings. I was just using the brush pens and trying to move around the ink with a wet, regular brush afterwards. So experiment, do things the wrong way, and then eventually you'll figure out how to do them the right way. Probably. This is probably bad advice. So my next one has a visual demo with it, but it is think in shapes, not things. Oh, hit my notes. So this is a technique that I've seen mostly oil painters talk about, but also my wife learned it in art school, so you know it's legit. I'm going to give you some shapes to get started, the forbidden shapes. This PSD also will be available to my patrons on Patreon. I'll also upload it as just separate images if you don't have a program that can open a PSD. And you can also make much more complicated scenes by thinking in shapes and not things, because you won't get as overwhelmed as quickly, I've found, or at least I don't. And it helps you to think of the piece as a whole rather than a bunch of smaller disparate parts. So I'm going to open up Photoshop now and I will show you my favorite shapes. Okay, so here is my shapes document. The very first thing we're going to go over is circles. If you can't draw a circle freehand, get some templates. I use several when I'm doing traditional art. I actually used a traditional template and just put it over my tablet to make these circles. I just grabbed a template because honestly I didn't want my circles to be perfect. So these are circles I freehanded. Well, the first one I made with a template and then I just copied and pasted it. And I'm going to use these circles to show you how to draw a face. If you've heard of how to draw a manga book, you've probably already seen these techniques, but we're going to go over them again. So let me go ahead and get on a different color. I'm going to be doing red is my new layer and the blue layer is the one I made as the base. So first we're going to do a head straight on. So your first step is going to just be draw a line down the middle to bisect it. And this is going to control which way the head faces, this middle line here. Actually, I'll show you how to do that now. I'm going to do a turned head and then a head in profile. So for a turned head, you want to do it this way. And then on this sideways head, I guess technically it would be following the same line as this. So let's go back to our first one. And then the next shape we're going to use is going to be kind of a rounded triangle. We're going to connect these shapes. And this isn't really how I sketch anymore, but this is how I learned. So I think it's helpful to start doing it this way, so you're breaking down the shapes and learning how to do that in your head. And then eventually you won't need to follow these steps, these runes. Okay. The next thing I generally do is erase this blue line on the base. I'm not going to do that today, but it generally distracts me. You want to ignore that line. Because this is the midpoint of the face, and it's going to be the midpoint of this face too, but it's going to be more rounded. And the midpoint of this one. So this line, you can kind of use it as the bottom of the nose, if you go a little ways down there, and then your lips will be about halfway between that and where you put your chin. So I'm just going to put a line there for now. So we have two shapes, the circle and this rounded triangle with no hat, no top. Then we're basically going to put more rounded triangles that are just longer for the cheeks or the jawline. I'm going to lightly erase this so that people who download the PSD can still see it. My Patreon link is in the description if you want that. So there's my jawline, and then your eyes are going to be centered on this. And I'm going to kind of use a trapezoid up here to represent our eyes. And at some point I'll upload like some skull studies. It helps to learn how the skull actually fits together when you're figuring out how to shade the face and where all the pieces go. But for today, we're just going to stick with lines. And eyes and eyebrows are sisters, not twins. They can be a little different shaped. It's okay. Your ear is going to be aligned with the eye, and then the bottom is at the bottom of the nose. Your eyebrows are closer to the top of your eyes than you think. If you're doing a stylized image, you can put them up pretty high to like convey emotion. And on realism, you can convey emotion with the eyebrows as well, obviously, but it's a little more subtle and I have a harder time doing it, so we're sticking with this. And then your nose is also a rounded triangle We're going to avoid sharp edges today. And then just kind of put little circles here. This isn't really the embodiment of shapes, not lines, because that would involve doing full color, but for sketching, I think this works. And then your eyes are half circles, because I'm going to have him like looking up or like neutral. And then, yeah. Alright, so that's your basic front face. The hairline is usually starts like right by the ear, and it can go lower if the person you're drawing has sideburns. And then this is like your basic rounded hairline. You can also come down and do like a widow's peak, really whatever you want. So I'm gonna leave that one, and let's go on to this side view and draw the same person. So we have this jaw, so we're gonna do a rounded triangle again. See, this is our triangle, leaving that line off, but it is a triangle. And then we're going to make this a triangle. See? And then that's where our jawline is. I'm going to use this intersection of this blue line and red as the nose. Someone on side of my house just yelled. Ear. Just kind of half moon. Sometimes you can see a little bit of the ear on this side. It kind of depends on the character and how far out the ears stick. I'm going to leave it off this time. Erase a little bit of that. And then when your character is turned, so eyes are shapes. The eye doesn't sit on top of the face. So if you have a human eye, the eye socket has a bit of depth to it. And the eye itself, as you turn, it kind of turns into this triangle slice. Obviously, the shape of the eye is going to determine some of this. And then with your eye, like the actual iris part, it's going to get thinner the more you turn this way. And also the pupil. Because your eye is a lens and it warps as you turn from your perspective. It's not like a circle in there. It's hard to explain. I would recommend looking at diagrams of the human eye or eye sockets to learn more about this. I don't explain it very well. For now, on this eye, it's also going to be that triangle, but the further away it is, the more you've got to squeeze that triangle in there, the more extreme your squeeze is. And here we go, and there's your lip. You can also, if you want, like put a little definition here. So this guy is sad, and this one is happier, I guess. So that's your 3/4 profile view. A lot of people find this one easiest to start with because you don't have to do as much symmetry as you would with this front view. But, you know, to each their own. And now we're going to do a side view, which is something I have only really recently gotten any good at. So let's see how this goes. So to start, we're going to close our triangle here, see? And then I'm going to erase like half of it because the jawline is going to stop about right here. And the neck comes out from here. This is the nape of your neck. Didn't put the neck on the others, but I find it easier to draw a profile when I think of where the neck is as well. On this one, I'm not going to use this blue line to tell me where the nose goes because it's not intersecting, as you can see, in a place that makes sense for that. So I'm just going to put my triangle here and just kind of line it up with the one I did next to it. And add some lips. So these are kind of like little mountain shapes, little triangle shapes. And then the chin is gonna, vary here based on the person you're drawing, but it does jut out a little on most people. So there's your mouth. Put a little definition if you want. The nostril from the side looks kind of like that. And then usually you're gonna lose some of this circle when you come in here drawing a person. And the eye from this angle is basically a triangle. It's like a right triangle almost, and then you're going to kind of curve all these lines a bit. And the iris and pupil are very small from this angle. Then the cheek comes out here, so this is like where the apple of your cheek is. Is that what it's called? The round part. And then your eyebrow. So that's your basic. Oh, and then the ear and this jaw line up. This is where they connect. Hairlines I forgot to do for these. And yeah, this is about where your cheekbone lives. This is the bone, this is where it goes down, so if you're shading, I guess I'll leave that there just for basics. So yeah, that's some basic things you can do with a circle, some faces you can make. So let's close this layer out. And now I'm going to show you another way to apply things to circles. This is what I call the Ethan Becker face rune. He does his faces a little differently. And I find this helpful sometimes and sometimes I don't. But the basics of this shape are, so we're going to bisect our circle again, like we did before. I'm going to bisect it like that. And then we're going to go make a this. And go like that. Do and that. He says it's the 1-2 buckle my shoe. And then this becomes your brow ridge. And then your eyes rest in here. And you can actually do the same shape for the eyes in this method. So 1, 2, buckle my shoe. 1, 2, buckle my shoe. You can do lips with this shape. I'm not very good at it, so I'm just going to link to his video in the description. I don't find this shape as useful as some of the other things that I have learned from his channel. His style is very funny and aggressive. It is like satire, but yeah, just something to keep in mind. So that is how he does his faces, and it works from other angles too. Like, you can do it this way, and then you end up with like a little of that. So if you find this easier to use, his video is in the description. If this makes more sense to you than the way I just explained it, which to a lot of people it probably does, go check that out. Link in the description. I'm not sure, or I'll try to also flag to it in the video. Next, we're going to talk rounded triangles. I'm going to show you a couple ways to use these. So I kind of just have these here to play with. They're a good shape to use for lots of things. Ethan Becker also has a better grasp of these than I do. But like, you can use them for torsos. Like, this is the hip. And then I'll draw another rounded triangle up here. And now we can kind of work this into a torso. This is a really long torso. But you're going to, start cutting out of your shape and figuring out like where things go. This is where your rib cage would go. I'm not the best at anatomy, and these aren't great examples, but the rounded triangle is another good shape. I use it to do my hands a lot. So something I'll do is like, I'll start with my rounded triangle for the base of the hand, and then I'll figure out where the thumb goes with another rounded triangle. And then kind of go from there. And then, woo. This is a lazy hand, but you get the picture, I think. So rounded triangles, they're very useful. Use them for things. This is just a quick hack for how to do legs really fast. You really only need 2 lines to indicate your leg. So you start with these 2. These are 2 legs. And then you just kind of connect them. I learned this from Karina Drawfee. And I'll link her anatomy video. But yeah, you can really do legs with just 2 simple lines. And this changed my life when I learned it. The person's legs are kind of backwards. They look like Tally from Mass Effect. You can also do more complicated legs this way. So this one, I actually don't know what I was going for here. Let's make it this and this. Just finish connecting it. So yeah, you just take 2 lines, and there's a leg. Wow. Hey, look at this foot. Is that a rounded triangle? Okay, next is one that I didn't come up with, but I learned by observing other drawings. I don't really remember the artists at this point who I picked this up from. They weren't doing like tutorials. I just kind of intuited it from not watching them work, but from actually breaking it down in my head. So this is the easiest way to differentiate between a torso that is more testosterone based, so the shorthand would be like a male torso and a female torso. So this is the shape when you have more testosterone in your body that your torso takes on, and this is the estrogen based shape for testosterone. So this is our chest, and it really is as simple as just adding a rectangle with some like curves. And then you put your shoulders up here, and bada bing, bada boom. So then on the guy, comes down more like this. I'm sorry, and then on your testosterone body, it's gonna come back more like that. And you put your shoulders out here, and bada bing, bada boom. You have two torsos, and you can, keep working on them from there. I generally don't need this shorthand when I am drawing a character like with breasts, but I find it very helpful when I'm drawing a character with pecs. So that is the torso heart. It is just this very basic, kind of like if a heart were all sharp edges. And that's it. And just right side up for pecs, upside down for a breast. And you can't go wrong. And this is my last one. This is also an Ethan Becker shape. This is the dynamic torso, and I'll link that video as well because it changed my life. This shape can turn into so many other shapes, and it's a little bit tricky to get this shape to stay in your head, to remember it. But once you do, your life will also be changed. So you can make a character do a full turnaround with nothing but this shape. So I'm going to draw in where my shoulders are on each of these, and this one you wouldn't be able to see the other one, and then here. And then we're going to figure out where the neck would go. On this one, we're going to see in the front, this is going to be the back of the body, so we wouldn't see the whole neck. And this is going to be a side view of the body. And something people often don't notice is that the chest has a protrusion there on everyone. That's where your rib cage goes. So on this one, I'm going to put a line to indicate the middle, and then we're going to add a Karina leg. 1, 2, 3, whoa! 1, oh, wrong way. 1, 2, 3, whoa! I don't really know what this pose is, but it kind of looks like Bigfoot. And then our head's gonna go up here. I'm not gonna draw this all the way out. And then for the arms, I'm gonna draw my hand first, and I'll show you how I decide where the arms go. You're going to draw a line from the middle of your circle to the base of your triangle. Then you're going to bisect it, figure out where the waistline is. That's where your thing ends. And then draw a triangle. Aw, yeah, you thought I was drawing a bunch of lines, but it was all to draw a triangle. And now you can draw your tubes. Arms are just tubes. And that's your first arm. So this one I'm just going to put behind him because I don't want to draw another arm. And then this one, we're going to have this guy turned to the side. The middle of the back would be here. So I'm going to make it like his legs are going up more. Like he's in some kind of crazy Matrix pose. And then we're going to put the hand, indicate by a triangle, do this, do that, and then tube. It's really just rectangles. There's more detail to it, but that'll come later. For now, just draw a rectangle. And then this hand's still behind. Head, we're gonna have turn that way, and then facing us. Now this one, the neck is gonna be a little lower based on where I put his shoulder. The middle of his back would be back here. So and make it like he's stopping here. Like, you thought you could beat me in battle? 1, 2, buckle my shoe. I learned this trick on Tumblr from a viral post like 10 years ago, so I don't really know who to credit for that at this point. If anyone knows, please let me know in the comments below. But yeah, so that's how you turn around the whole torso. Ethan Becker's video is on the screen, and go look at his instead because his is better. And this PSD, one more time, will be available to my patrons on Patreon. Next, draw things more than once. I'll put an example on the screen, but basically draw your composition a few times before you do your actual finished piece. In my sketchbook, I tend to, on the left side of a page, do a bunch of different thumbnails. So I just draw a really tiny rectangle or square, depending on what format sketchbook I'm using, if it's a square or rectangle. And I just sketch out a bunch of really rough stick figure versions of the piece I have in mind. And I experiment with different placement and poses, and that helps me get to the final piece. I can figure out which composition works and doesn't without having to make the whole thing. I learned this from Drawing with Waffles, but most professional artists I know do it. So make a thumbnail, make it rough, and do a bunch of them and see what works best. And also, this applies to if you draw something and you hate it, you're allowed to start over and do it again if you want. Don't let your limits limit you. Wow. I'm bad at pithy phrasing. Let's move on. Bop it, flip it, walk away from it. Don't bop it, but flip your picture. If you're working on traditional mediums on paper, you can download an app for your phone where you can mirror images. I don't have one to recommend in particular. I think I used Line Camera last time because my built-in phone camera couldn't do it. If you're on the computer, just mirror it in Photoshop. If something looks weird in your picture and you can't figure out what it is, it will be way more obvious when you flip it the other way. You can also flip it upside down. Something my wife used to do in art school was draw photos from references that were upside down. And that forces you to look at the shapes of the lines as they are, not as your brain thinks they are, because your brain is a liar. If you're feeling really stagnant, draw on weird size paper. I've gotten really into art trading cards. I'll put some on the screen. These are all 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches. And sometimes I'm having an art block, so I just draw really tiny because it goes way faster. And I can just make a bunch of iterations of things and images that come out really quickly. And I also trade these with people on Facebook just for fun. So I recommend playing with weird sizes or try to draw on really, really big paper. It will help you learn to expand how you view art. This obviously doesn't really apply to digital because it's limited by the size of your tablet, but try drawing really small on real paper. Try drawing really big on real paper. That's another thing they make you do in art school. Most figure drawing classes make you buy these huge pads of paper. So just play with sizes. They will make you think about your art more and make you better at any size. This tip doesn't work for digital, so good luck. Give up. Sometimes a piece just isn't working the way you want it to, and it's okay to just scrap it and start over. But don't do that every time, or you won't have any art. That's something, a rut I got stuck in for a while, and it's sad. So, you know, if you want to start over on a piece, do it again. Or if you just don't like it anymore, stop and move on to another thing. Just make sure that the ratio of art you scrap to the art you keep is never more than like 50-50. Like, if you're throwing away 90% of your art, don't do that. You're just going to discourage yourself and get into the habit of thinking everything you draw is trash. Sometimes finishing a piece, even if you don't think it's as good as it could be, is really cathartic because then you can, like, definitively move on from it. Your mileage may vary with that, but that works really well for me. And draw what you want. This is what big art doesn't want you to know. Just draw what makes you happy. Turn all your life drawings into your OCs. There's no rules. I know a lot of like art teachers turn their nose up at anime, and the reason they do that, the reason that it's not terrible advice not to draw anime, for example, is not because you shouldn't draw anime, it's because you shouldn't use anime as a reference photo. So Anime frames are drawn very quickly by underpaid workers usually, and the anatomy and proportions are usually wrong, or you might be getting a smear frame where the anatomy and proportions are exaggerated on purpose. So my advice to you would be draw from life references or things like Doll-Atelier where the proportions are built into the model for you, and then make it your style afterwards. Like when you're drawing it, once you start rendering it out and adding the different details, make it anime then, but start with a real reference as much as you can, or a reference that you know has good proportions, like the Doll-Atelier app Doll Design, or they make those little, basically the real life version of that are those little very posable anime Figmas. Start with something that already has good proportions, and then add your anime on top of it, but draw what makes you happy or you won't draw. So that's my big tip. And the last thing is embrace the suck, which is a quote from a bad movie, but it makes sense here. And when you notice your art isn't good, that is the last step before you learn how to do something correctly. So have a mindset of you're growing and you're learning, and if you're noticing a mistake, that means you are getting good enough to know when you're making mistakes, because there's 4 stages of competence. There's unconscious incompetence, which is when you suck and you don't know it, conscious incompetence, when you suck and you do know it, and then you go into conscious competence, which is you're good, you know that you're good, or you know when something you do is good, and then unconscious competence is when you can just be good without having to put a lot of thought into it. I'm only on stage 3 there, personally, but the last step of conscious incompetence is right before you get to being competent. So if you don't know how to draw something in your piece, go find a reference, or take one yourself. Take a selfie in your mirror of the pose you're trying to work out, or the hand, or whatever you need to do. Find a reference and learn how to do it correctly, and then you'll know how. You might have to practice it a bunch, because practice is good, but you can also just do what I do and draw your D&D character 300 or more times per week, and then eventually you'll just get good, even if you sucked at first. And that concludes my TED Talk. I appreciate y'all sticking with me through the whole video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something, and drop me in the comments what your favorite art tips are, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!